Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. Welcome to the show. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, a bunch of stuff in the news, 6 reviews like usual. We have 3 new Netflix shows of sort of varying interest. They're all sort of reality or documentary type series. Well, no, I guess one is scripted, but still a little off the beaten path. And then we have a new import on the CW called Devils. We've got the Supermarket Sweep remake with Leslie Jones. And then we also have a pretty high-profile show on Disney+. So I'm going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about the news. But first, just real quick at the top here, I want to pay a little tribute to Sean Connery. He passed away either this morning or yesterday, but the world found out today. And I woke up to the news this morning. He was 90 years old. He didn't really do a ton of television, so, doing a big tribute in my TV news and reviews is sort of pointless, I guess. But he started out really doing a lot of, British theater-type television in the 50s and 60s. He did, Macbeth as a TV film. I assume in England, but he did a lot of, BBC Sunday Night Theater type stuff. He showed up here and there in little things, like he played a role in one of the Magical World of Disney movies in the late 50s. So he did a little bit of TV work, but obviously much more known as James Bond, a movie star in general, a sex symbol as well. I think he was people's sexiest man alive at least once. So didn't want to let the day go by without at least acknowledging that and his huge contribution, like I said, mainly to the film world, but certainly a little bit of TV work here and there as well. Alright, so let's get to the news this week. Renewals and cancellations. Just one cancellation, actually, so we'll start there because there's a ton of renewals. And our cancellation is Brave New World on Peacock. It went 1 season. In fact, it was the only scripted show that was new that was available when Peacock premiered. So this was, sort of a little bit of a flagship for them. I saw ads for this all the time. When I reviewed it, I graded it okay. I think it was in the C+ type range. Alden Ehrenreich was the star of that. I could see potential with the script, though. So, I think that is something I'll probably end up finishing. But my guess would be, they didn't say anything with COVID or anything, but my guess would be it was just too expensive to produce for the return they were getting on it. The article didn't mention any particular reason. They just said, yep, it's canceled, no more Brave New World. So I don't know, but my guess would be that their profit margins were probably pretty slim on that show. I think it was pretty expensive to produce. So let's talk about all the renewals. There's several that I don't really care about and several that I'm really excited about. So let's start with some of the ones I could care either way about. Big Brother 23, that is coming back. No big surprise there, but this past summer, I should say, they didn't have a Big Brother because of COVID, so they did a best of kind of thing. So Big Brother 23 is going to be scheduled for next summer. Julie Chen, of course, is back to host that. And then a couple new ones on the CW. Coroner, which I reviewed about a month ago. It was, an average review. And then this other new show, Burden of Truth, which I'm not familiar with. But they are both getting a second season on the CW next fall. These were shows that were co-opted from the CW from outside sources. One was, I think, from CBC in Canada. The other one may have been from Australia. I'm not sure. But they've been renewed in their own countries for a 3rd and 4th season, respectively. So they're obviously, really cranking out the episodes. They're doing very well for their home networks. And so the CW, I guess, is doing all right with them as well. And like I said, we'll talk more about a new CW show called Devils, which is another one that they sort of co-opted from another country. Also, Cherish the Day on the Oprah Winfrey Network. I've never heard of this show, but it is the #1 show with black women in its time slot. It's on the Oprah Winfrey Network, of course. It's from Ava DuVernay, who directed Selma and a couple other things. I think she directed that horrible Wrinkle in Time remake. But it's an anthology series, so a lot of different people involved with it. But I've not heard of this. Look, sometimes shows fall through the cracks for me because I don't have cable, so That apparently is doing very well, though, with the Oprah Winfrey fans, and so Cherish the Day gets renewed for season 2. All right, now, also here's one I've not watched either, but people are excited about this: Narcos Mexico. That's going to be a third season on Netflix, and this is, of course, a spin-off of the original Narcos, and people love these Narcos shows. I have not seen them myself, but Diego Luna, who was the star of Narcos New Mexico, and also I believe one of the executive producers, he is out for season 3, and no bad blood or anything. He just, with the passage of time from COVID, he has just resigned himself to some other projects, so he is going to be not in for season 3, but everybody else in the cast is going to return. So obviously they'll build a show around them, or maybe they will get somebody else as sort of the quote-unquote lead of that show. All right, so 3, though, that I'm very excited about. Ted Lasso, let's talk about that. So Ted Lasso with Jason Sudeikis is one of my favorite shows of this year, certainly my favorite comedy of the year, it would have to be. And I gave it an A-, I believe. Really, I mean, the show that we kind of all need right now. It's just this very sweet show. He's a sweet guy. I mean, there's like cursing in it and stuff. It's Apple TV, so they can do what they want. But so I wouldn't say it's like necessarily a family show, but it's just a great show, and the proof is in the pudding there. So it's Apple TV Plus's, or Apple Plus TV, whatever you call it. It's their top comedy in all 50 countries. All of their top 50 countries that get Apple TV Plus. It is number 1 on their comedies. And also, it has driven 25% new viewers since the show's launch, which means word is getting out, people are checking it out, and then they are sticking with Apple TV Plus. So that speaks volumes. Now, this was already renewed for season 2, I think like the week it premiered, or maybe even ahead of the premiere. But now it's going to be renewed for a 3rd season as well. So season 2 hasn't even started filming yet, but we will get 3 seasons now of Ted Lasso. So that's really cool. Babysitter's Club is going to get a 2nd season on Netflix. Another really great show. This one definitely is for families, and another very high grade for me. I think an A- as well. And I think, we need more family shows like this on Netflix. There's so many curse-laden and sex-laden shows on the streamers that it's really nice to see a wholesome show that goes back, decades as well. All the parents know Babysitter's Club as well from their youth. So that's going to get a season 2. And then here's one we have never talked about on this show because it started long before I started doing the reviews, and it's No Activity, which is on CBS All Access, soon to be Paramount Plus. This is going to get a season 4 on CBS All Access. If you've not heard of this show, it stars Patrick Bramhall and Tim Meadows, and it's from a concept that they did, I forget where, not in England, I don't think. I want to say maybe Australia or something, and they've adapted it for U.S. television, but I think Patrick Bramhall was in both, if I remember correctly. But it's largely improvised, and I don't know if she's still in it because I haven't seen season 3, but the gal from Strangers with Candy was in the first couple seasons as well as one of the dispatchers. And I can't think of her name right now. That's going to bother me. But it's a very, very funny show. Nobody talks about it because nobody really talks about anything on CBS All Access except for Star Trek, New Twilight Zone with Jordan Peele, maybe The Good Fight in certain company, but nobody talks about the show. It has gone under the radar, but I think it's hilarious. The first 2 seasons were great, so I'm very excited that it's going to get a season 4. I do have to catch up on that and watch season 3 as well, but it's called No Activity. All right. So we have a lot of other things to talk about. So CW, they are putting together a Nancy Drew-niverse, because everything has to be a universe now, and it's going to be with Tom Swift, who I'm not familiar with, but there's Tom Swift books, and they're in the same camp as Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew. It's from the same production house. Not the same authors necessarily, but the same, production house that does all those books. Does Tom Swift. And it will have a gay black lead, which, to be honest, I'm done with it. Not every show has to have a bunch of gay characters, let alone leads. I get it. Will and Grace was very ahead of its time. As a gay man, enough. Like, not every show, especially on the CW. Batwoman, I couldn't even stand more than the first episode because so much of the episode was about how she's bisexual. It's like, why don't you go fight crime first, and then we can hear about your sex life. But it's the CW. They have to, cater to all of these. Look, I'm not in their demo. They have to cater to all of the teens and specifically teen girls that watch all these CW shows. So okay, fine, gay black lead. But he wasn't gay in the books. He wasn't. I assume he wasn't black in the books. I don't know about the books, but and he could be black. I guess that's fine. But the gay, it's like not everybody has to be gay. Not every show has to have a message about how sexuality is okay and just fight your crimes, for God's sake. All right. So that's going to be, I guess, for next fall of 2021. They're looking for the Tom Swift show. But they're putting together the Drewniverse, so I guess expect some crossovers with the new Nancy Drew show. All right, HBO Max. This will be a quick one. Getting non-exclusive rights to run a bunch of Comedy Central staples, including Inside Amy Schumer, Nathan For You, Reno 911, Key and Peele, and The Biggie, Chappelle's Show. So these are mostly, variety sketch shows. Reno 911, not so much, but that's like an improv show, so sort of the same. And so HBO Max, non-exclusive means that other streamers can still run them. So if they're on any of the other streamers right now, I think Chappelle is, but I'm not sure if Key and Peele still are. I don't know if any of these other ones are anywhere right now. But other than, I guess, Quibi probably has Reno 911 for the month that they're still on, just because they have the new season. But HBO Max, I should say, will be running all of those, which is really cool. I mean, these are some staples, I think, especially Chappelle and Key and Peele, staples to the Comedy Central family. All right, so CBS, the network, not All Access, the actual network, is going to be trimming all of its in-house hour-long dramas to 16 to 18 episodes. What that means in-house is anything that is produced by CBS Studios is going to be trimmed 16 to 18 episodes from the typical 21 to 24. Obviously because of the shortened TV season because of COVID. They're still in talks with the outside studios that do some of their other shows like All Rise. And then The Unicorn was already slated for 13 episodes as sort of a mid-seasoner once they announced their fall schedule. And that will remain at 13. So the other comedies on their slate have not been revealed what they're going to do. I mean, they're going to be premiering their stuff within the next 2 weeks. So it's not a super shortened season. It is shortened by about 5 or 6 weeks, but you figure one of those weeks is inevitably a rerun anyway, at least. So they may stick with 16, 18 for the comedies as well. Personally, for me, I'm all for it because I'm always behind on my TV. I'm currently watching shows right now that were on around Thanksgiving and Christmas last year. So I'm always 8 to 10 months behind on my shows. So if you give me a shortened season, that's fine. I'm all for it. And now that I've been doing the TV News and Review show, it's even worse because I'm discovering so many new shows that I probably wouldn't have before. But the point of doing these reviews every week is so I could, explore sort of all of the shows that are on and determine what I like from that. But it's giving me a whole new list of things to watch. So I don't know. But yes, I'm all for shortened seasons. All right. Speaking of CBS going to their All Access branch, and this is very quick, just some casting news. Why Women Kill, which is a very popular show on there, but it's an anthology series, so every season is going to be with a different cast. I believe Lucy Liu was in the first season, if I'm not mistaken. It did seem interesting. It was one that I wanted to watch. Haven't gotten to yet, but season 2 is going to include Nick Frost and Allison Tolman. Allison, of course, coming off of Emergence, a great show that did not get a second season. And really, didn't necessarily need one. It wrapped up okay, but I just really liked it, so I would have liked to see more. And then Nick Frost, of course, we know him from, all of those movies like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. So they're going to be on for season 2 of Why Women Kill. And then let's close as we do with reboots and spinoffs because there's a few of these as well. So One is a show I've not really heard of, but it sounds interesting. It's called You Can't Ask That. It's an Australian show that is a success there, and they're branching it off into like 10 different countries. The U.S. is one of them, and I don't think there's a distributor yet, but it may be on ABC, because I believe it's ABC Studios that bought the rights to the show. But it's essentially, they take people of a certain demographic, like little people or sex workers or whatever it is, and it's just basically them answering questions that are frequently thought of with this group, but maybe not necessarily asked to them because it might be inappropriate or whatever. So a couple of people are going to represent sort of their community and answer some questions. And I mean, it's perfect for COVID because it's just going to be in a studio with two people and the director and the cameraman like talking. So there's not going to be any like interaction or anything. But it seems like an interesting concept. I mean, I don't know how well it will fly on television. It seems like more of a podcast to me, but you never know. You never know how these things will look. Other than that, we've got the new Masked Singer spinoff, and this is called The Masked Dancer. I think this is so stupid. But I thought The Masked Singer was stupid as well, and now I'm like obsessed with it. So I guess you don't know, but the dancing shows in general I just don't watch. World of Dance, So You Think You Can, Dancing with the Stars. I don't watch any of them. Dancing does not appeal to me. But Craig Robinson is going to be the host of this, which that kind of makes sense. He's definitely got musical capabilities. We see him singing all the time in The Office, and then the panelists are going to be. They're going to go with a four-person panel like The Masked Singer has, and it's going to be Ken Jeong, of course. You can't have a Fox reality show these days without Ken Jeong. And then these other ones are interesting. Brian Austin Green, who was just recently unmasked in The Masked Singer. And then Ashley Tisdale, that makes sense. She's got a dance background with her Disney stuff. And then the big catch here is Paula Abdul. That is like number one. When you think of World of Dance, obviously is like the J-Lo show, but like any kind of dancing competition, you think Paula Abdul. It makes more sense than American Idol. Yes, she could sing, but dancing's really her forte. So I think it'll be interesting at least with that. I'm sure I will review it when it first comes up, but whether I stick with it like The Masked Singer, my guess would be no, but hard to say, I guess. And then In Treatment is coming back for a fourth season on HBO. This was a show I never got into. Again, I never had HBO, so the things I wanted on HBO, I really had to seek out. And this sounded interesting in concept, but it was a nightly show, I believe. It was 5 nights a week, and it was a half-hour long. I think it was Gabriel Byrne was the star of it, but he played the therapist, and then each day of the week we met a different person. So Mondays would be one person, Tuesdays would be another person, Wednesdays, and then Fridays he would be in his own treatment with where he's the patient. So they're bringing it back with Orange is the New Black's Uzu Aduba, I always pronounce that wrong, who is coming off of a hot role as I forget something Chisholm on Mrs. America. She was nominated for that. I don't think she won for it. She may have, though. That thing got like 4 nominees for supporting actress, but she was great in it, and I'm very excited to see this new version of In Treatment. That I will definitely check out and at least review it for you guys, but I might stick with it because I always liked the original concept. It just seemed like such a commitment to have it stripped like that Monday through Friday for however long it was, 3 seasons. All right, and then finally, this is very exciting. Over to HBO Max, Tiny Toons Looniversity. We had Tiny Toon Adventures when I was growing up. We have the new Animaniacs show that is going to Hulu. I feel like if contracts were inked a year later, the Animaniacs show would be going to HBO Max instead of Hulu. That seems like the home for it. It's owned by the WB, and so I think because of the Animaniacs reboot, HBO Max is like, well, we got to have our own Steven Spielberg animated 90s throwback. Let's do Tiny Toons. So it's a 2-season order right out of the gate, and it's an order for Cartoon Network as well. So I don't know if it's going to be airing new episodes on Cartoon Network and then the next day be available on HBO Max, kind of like Hulu does. I'm not really sure. It's rare that we get a streamer and a an actual network to go in on something together. So I'm not exactly sure. I see the Cartoon Network does not own the rights to Tiny Toon Adventures, so I imagine they're going to be airing it on Cartoon Network, which I think is awesome. I always loved Tiny Toons and Animaniacs both. I can't say Animaniacs, but I loved it. It was on when I was in like late middle school and then high school. So I might have been a little old for it, but like you're never too old for Animaniacs. And then Tiny Toons, it's like I grew up on Bugs Bunny cartoons, so it was perfect. So I'm very excited for both of those. But Animaniacs will premiere first, obviously, on Hulu. That's coming up, I think, within the next few weeks. So I'm excited to review that for you. And then Tiny Toon Adventures will be on HBO Max, presumably sometime in 2021. But let's get to our reviews. That's enough news chatter. I know we had a lot this week. I will try and get through these pretty quick. Some of them do not need, I think, that long of a setup, so that might help us. But I didn't even know where to start this week. There's no super like high profile show for the week. So let's just talk about Supermarket Sweep, because people were very excited this was coming back. ABC always does well with its game show reboots. Leslie Jones is the one at the helm here. And I'll be honest, I have never, I think, watched a full episode of Supermarket Sweep in my life. I'm big on game shows, but this was on Lifetime when I was growing up, and I did not have cable. Well, we had it for like 2 years, but we got rid of it before Supermarket Sweep came back. So it was on occasionally like at my friend's house, so I've seen like parts of it, I guess, but I don't think I've ever seen a full episode. But people love this show, and now Netflix has a handful of them on their streamer as well from the 90s. So I watched one of them to be able to compare and contrast with the Leslie Jones version. So, like a lot of the ABC shows, it's basically 2 episodes in one because it's an hour-long show. Some of them, like Press Your Luck, have decided to do, instead of 2 separate episodes, do a big bonus game for the last half hour. But Card Sharks, Match Game, Supermarket Sweep, they're all just playing 2 half-hour games in their hour time slot. So, if you know the concept, you know it. If you don't, people basically answer food and brand related questions to earn extra time on the clock, and then they go to town with the supermarket that in this case has been created from a hangar in LAX. They've just made this supermarket specifically for this show, so you don't necessarily know where things are because it's not your supermarket, so you have to kind of look for things. But, they fill up their carts, and then whoever gets the most money at the end in the carts, and there's like bonuses along the way, they win and go to the bonus game. So it's basically the same concept as the 90s version, and largely the 60s version, from what I've read about that. So, which was originally on ABC too, by the way. So this comes down to a couple things. It comes down to how is Leslie Jones as a host, and it comes down to how they've, made it different or kept it the same. Like Match Game is identical to the old version, except you swap in Alec Baldwin, and it's very much the same. Even, the exact seating of the contestants and everything. So in the 90s version, they had people in the audience, and you would go pick things out, who's got the bag of Doritos. The couple that was given the bag of Doritos at the beginning, they stand up, and then they're on the show. Obviously, with social distancing, they can't do that now anyway, so they've dropped that concept, and they just have the teams at the beginning. So we learned a little bit about the teams. They're all in some way related. They're friends, they're neighbors, they're married, father and son, whatever it is. And then Leslie will ask them questions. And then they go do the sweep, same as the original show. A couple things I didn't like about this, not having ever watched the show, I was a little bit lost as to some of the rules, which they go over in the one episode I saw on Netflix. They went over them while the people were shopping. The voiceover person was like, now, remember, these people can only pick up 5 items of the same kind for their cart. Okay, cool. That's something I didn't know. It is a rule also in the new version, but we weren't told that. So if you're already familiar with the game, I guess you know all this. But like when I watch Press Your Luck, Elizabeth Banks at the beginning of every episode of Press Your Luck explains the rules as if we've never seen the show before. It takes 25 seconds. It's done. Great. Now, I've watched Press Your Luck for 30 plus years of my life. That was one of my favorite shows growing up. So in the 80s, gosh, more than 30, probably almost 40. I mean, I think it went on in 1983, and I probably watched it right around that time. I loved game shows even as a little kid. So of course I know the concept of Press Your Luck. You probably know the concept of Press Your Luck. Even if you've never seen it, you probably know about the no whammy thing. But this, we weren't really explained fully all of the different rules and regulations as they're out there in the supermarket. For example, you also lose points if you crash into either one of the other contestants or one of the cameramen. Didn't know that. That wasn't explained. Now, maybe if somebody did it, Leslie would explain it. But still, I didn't know that. So, that left me a little bit with a cold taste because I'm like, I don't know all the rules of this game, and I don't like that. And Leslie Jones as a host is a little bit hit or miss as well. I like Leslie Jones as a personality. I do. I liked her Weekend Update stuff on SNL. Her skits were pretty terrible because she always would flub some lines. But here, she's just herself. She's in her element. And she definitely is excited to be there, and I love that. That energy is just oozing through her. And you can, look, all of these ABC shows with the game shows have different ways of the host sort of being. Joel McHale on Card Sharks is obviously very cool and sort of like standoffish and sort of snarky. Elizabeth Banks, she's just there to have fun, encourage the contestants. Leslie Jones is in your face. She is sort of not pitting the contestants against each other, but, sort of a little bit, kind of, oh, well, they got you on that one, whatever. One of my main issues, though, is in her excitement that she cannot contain, she really can't say supermarket sweep properly. She always drags out the sweep, and so it's like supermarket swipe. It sounds like she's saying supermarket swipe. And there's a few times where she said it regular, but like, and it's through her excitement. But it's just like, all right, you got to calm down. Like, I know you're excited to host the game show that you've always wanted to be on. I would be excited as well. But it's just like, the stars of these shows should be the contestants and not necessarily the host, And so I think there's maybe a little too much Leslie Jones personality in the mix. But again, that's personal preference, I guess. So I thought the show was okay. It was passable. I don't think I'll really watch. I mean, I am much more into like trivia type of game shows, not so much Let's Go Shopping. I do like Price is Right, though, and that's obviously not trivia either. Let's Make a Deal isn't really trivia. I enjoy that. So there's certainly, examples of, that not being the case. But for the most part, I do enjoy a good trivia contest. And I don't know, the whole shopping thing, like, I don't really like food shopping. So to me, like, this is a game show I don't think I would want to be on necessarily, but I do like the games that they play with, like the different brand names and stuff like that. Those were kind of fun. So I'm going to leave Supermarket Sweep, the reboot, with a B-. I think it's okay. If you like the original, I think you will like this a lot, because it's more or less the same thing, but I don't think these shows are really for me. So let's talk about Disney Plus now and their new NASA show, The Right Stuff. This is based on the 70s book from Tom Wolfe, and of course also, I think, the more famous 1983 film adaptation. And I say it's more famous than the book because it was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture. It won, I think, 4 of the 8 it was nominated for. Mostly in the technical categories, but still. And this was one of my dad's favorite movies growing up. He had this on a lot. Now, I've never seen the whole thing, but I've certainly seen bits and pieces just from him always watching it. He had it on VHS. So this is based on the true story of the Mercury 7 astronauts in the 70s, and basically they became instant celebrities, them and their family, or maybe it takes place in the 60s, the late 60s. I'm not sure. It doesn't say. But certainly, I mean, John Glenn, I remember from Hidden Figures, that certainly took place in the 60s. So I guess maybe this takes place in the late 60s. And right away, the beginning will tell you, like, okay, this is based on true events, but, we've dramatized some things, we've changed some things around. Is that like a legal thing to say now? Like, no kidding. I feel like every show I watch that's based on a real event, I sort of know going into it, okay, there's going to be a couple things that have been changed. Is it going to be as bad as Bohemian Rhapsody, where they just throw the entire timeline of Queen out and just do a patchwork of whatever they want? I don't think it's usually that bad, but I think we expect some sort of disassociation with the real story when we think about movies and TV shows that are based on true events. And certain things, if they're like Ryan Murphy productions, for example, are very overly dramatized because they're more soap opera than, factual based show. But I guess since this is a National Geographic show, that's why it's on Disney Plus. It's under the National Geographic brand. I guess because it's part of Nat Geo, they decided, okay, well, Nat Geo is known for its realism and da-da-da-da-da, so maybe that's why they did it. I hadn't thought about that till right this second, but that could certainly be one. But one thing that is very interesting here is that Chuck Yeager is not a part of this miniseries. Now, he was not part of the Mercury 7, so all of the Mercury 7 are here and present. John Glenn and Gus Grissom and, people that you know and don't know. But there's no Chuck Yeager, who was, on the ground in Mission Control, and a huge part of the movie, so much so that Sam Shepard at least was nominated, but he may have won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for that film. So, huge part of the history and the lore of the Mercury 7. So why they've decided to excise his character completely, I don't know. Couldn't even begin to guess. But it seems to not be cool, and we wouldn't have seen him, I think, in this first episode anyway. I mean, all I watched was the first one, but I looked up the differences between the book and the movie, or the movie and the television show, rather, and it's the first thing it said was, well, there's no Chuck Yeager, which is like a gaping hole. And so I pulled up a couple of different reviews, and all of them mentioned like Chuck Yeager's absence is, a huge hole in this show. So, and that's somebody, I mean, of all the Mercury 7, I think 3 of their names, Alan Shepard, Gus Grissom, and John Glenn, by name, and then I knew Chuck Yeager. So it's just weird that he's not in this. Most of the actors you'll sort of notice from other things. I sort of recognize him from that one thing I can't remember. They're sort of that guys. But the lead who plays Alan Shepard is Jake McDormand, who played the lead in the TV show Limitless. He played Murphy Brown's son in the Murphy Brown reboot. So he's definitely been around, and I always like him on screen ever since Limitless, which is, I think, where I first at least took notice of him, if it was not where I first saw him. But fans of that show, I think, will agree that he was great on it. And so him being the star of this certainly piqued my interest a bit. This is basically gearing up for the ride. The first episode is basically them sort of getting their marching orders, and NASA determining who will be part of the Mercury 7. So it's a lot of like montages of them testing for things and whatever. So we see a little bit into their family life. We see a few glimpses into who they are, whether they're family men, what their story is. And there's definitely some drama here. But I would say, because it's a mini-series, it's an 8-episode show, which Disney Plus will be parsing out one a week of. I think the first 3 are up already. It's going to be, I think, a lot more soapy than the movie was. The movie had to fit everything in 2 hours or so. So obviously most of it was about the mission and less about the men's background and their family lives, and maybe it was some about their camaraderie. But in this first episode, at least, they were all still on the ground, so it was time to delve into who they are as people, and it was okay. I mean, I like to check the Rotten score. I don't usually delve into reviews. I did on this one just because of the Chuck Yeager thing, but the Rotten score is very, very middling. I think that's a little harsh. I think even though Chuck Yeager's not part of it, even though it's a little more dramatic, I think, than the movie was in terms of looking into these people's lives, like dramatic in a, this is us kind of way, whereas I think the movie, from what I know, is more based on the mission itself. We'll get to the mission, I'm sure, in the show, but, definitely a little more character development here. Not all of it great, And other than Jake Dorman, the acting's like okay. There's, like I said, there's a few people that you recognize from things, but they're not A-listers, and maybe that's for a reason. I don't know. But I thought the show was okay. I think I would definitely finish it if I have the time to sit down and devote 8 hours to it. I'm going to leave The Right Stuff with a B. I think it's definitely passable. A lot of like the usual tropes that we see in space shows, including several that we've already seen earlier this year in For All Mankind, that's on Apple TV. But look, if you are into space stuff, I think you'll definitely get something out of this, even if it's not as space heavy as maybe Apollo 13 or some of the other things. All right, so let's go over to Netflix. There's 3 very interesting, very different shows to talk about on Netflix. Deaf U, The Cabin with Bert Kreischer, and Social Distancing. So let's start with Deaf U. This is a reality show that is 8 episodes long. They're all of these shows are short. All of them, none of them quite hit that half-hour mark. All of them are like around 20 to 24, 25 minutes. In fact, one of the Deaf U episodes is 16 minutes, I think, which I think is weird. At least pad it to the 20 minutes, because it's not like they're focusing on one person per episode. It's a thread of these different characters, and there's about, I don't know, maybe 8 characters total. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 7. So there's 7 characters total that we're following at this real life university for the hard of hearing, basically, and the deaf. It's called Gallaudet or Gallaudet. I forget. They only pronounce it once that I heard. So a lot of this show is kind of silent. Like there's music for us, the audience, but a lot of it is through sign language, and we see it, on the closed captions if we don't read sign language. There's a few people that can basically talk completely. Like one guy is only deaf in his left ear, so he can speak in full sentences, but he also, signs too. But other than that, most of the characters talk very, very little with their mouths. They do the sign language. So it's a lot of reading, so if you're not into that, maybe this isn't for you. But boy, this is an interesting show. The purpose from the creator is to show deaf people as humans from all walks of life. And I think this is something Netflix excels at. We had a recent show about autistic people. What was that called? Love is Blind was the one where they couldn't see each other, but they weren't actually blind in that. I forget what the show was. Love on the Spectrum, I think, is what it was. And this is very much like that, except that focused solely on dating. That was basically an autistic dating show. Whereas, a la The Bachelor. Whereas this is more like The Real World or something like that, but with deaf and hard of hearing people. Because this isn't specifically about romance, although, boy, that rears its head a lot in the couple episodes I saw. But it's more about them functioning at this college and just being college students, going to parties, being on the football team, cliques. So it's not just about the romance aspect of it. It's definitely more of a real world type take. And I say that as in the real world, the show, not just our real world, because this is very, very reality sort of sculpted. We're definitely making some villains out here, like they do on those types of shows, which is fine. I mean, look, we never see hard of hearing people on television, really, ever. I mean, that's why A Quiet Place was such a revelation, because not only, was the entire movie just about in silence, so, a deaf person could enjoy the movie, exactly the same as I do, but the girl that plays John Krasinski's daughter in that movie is deaf in real life. So it's like, wow, that's crazy, because we don't really see a lot of deaf people on television because it's hard to. Marlee Matlin has obviously appeared sometimes. She famously was in that Seinfeld episode. She had her own show, I think, for a season or two back in the late 80s on NBC. But again, it is very rare. I mean, that's the last example I can think of a series regular that's deaf in the last 30 years. I mean, Lou Ferrigno, I think, has partial hearing loss as well, which is why he does talk, a little bit funny. And that was, but again, that was Incredible Hulk was in the 70s. So, I mean, we've gone decades really without a show that's really focusing on deaf culture and deaf people. And I was glued to this. I thought this was awesome. Now, it's a little too sexed up to be like family viewing, which I sort of was bummed out about because I thought this would be a great family show. But once I realized, okay, well, it is at a college setting. They obviously want to pump up the normal reality elements, so I get it. Okay, I'm not going to fault it for that, but maybe they could have some sort of spinoff where if there is a deaf high school or middle school that's out there in the country, there's got to be, maybe they could do something with that, more celebrating things with their family. We hear a little bit about the family background of these guys, and how their parents, are not deaf and that kind of thing and how they function, but very, very little. So, didn't love that part, but for the most part, I think this is a great look into these people's lives, and I leave Deaf U with a B. Very interesting. So up next, we're going to go to the Cabin with Bert Kreischer, and this is a cabin I'm not sure I want to go to in real life. I'm not even sure I want to watch any more episodes. I actually watched 3 of the 5 episodes of this that are up because they're all vastly different, and basically the concept is, if you don't know Bert Kreischer, he's a stand-up comedian. He is known as the Machine. He frequently has his shirt off stage, or on stage, I should say. That's sort of what his shtick. I think he's very funny in his stand-up. He's good friends with the morning show that I podcast out of Philly, Preston and Steve. So he's on there, every month or two, just to call in, even if he's not promoting anything, and their conversations are always funny and engaging. So I like Bert as a person, I do, but this show is a mess. So basically the concept is he rented a cabin for a week or 2 or whatever, just to kind of clear his head, but he decided instead of clearing his head, he's going to make a Netflix show about it. And so he's going to invite some of his famous friends that don't know each other to the cabin, and they're going to do stuff like axe throwing and canoeing. It's just such a wildly off-base concept to what's entertaining. Like, first of all, part of it is most definitely scripted. He calls into his wife over FaceTime, and like the one episode has him with Tom Segura. That's like the first episode. He does a podcast with Tom Segura. He's another comedian. They know each other, whatever. So in the first few minutes of the first episode, he's FaceTiming his wife, and he's like, "Oh, guess what, honey? You're going to be mad, but I decided to make this a show instead of, me decompressing." And it's so obviously scripted. The wife can't act. It's terrible. So that was lame. And then episode 2, we had Caitlyn Jenner and Nikki Glazer, who don't know each other, but, are very friendly with each other. They bond right away, and that's great. And they do axe throwing. Obviously, Caitlyn used to be, Bruce, who was a great Olympian. And it's just, they were talking about that and everything, and it was fine. But the conversations on the couch in the cabin that are not scripted is where the show shines. And we get those for maybe 4 to 5 minutes out of the 23 or 25 minutes of the show. Bert is a great communicator. He's a great talker. He's a great conversationalist. This is where the show shines. Not when they're throwing axes or on the canoe. In the other episode I saw was Joel McHale, Ms. Pat, who I'm not familiar with, and Kaylee Cuoco. And it was some of the most uncomfortable television I've ever seen in my life. Basically, Ms. Pat is this, big black comedian who, I don't know her, but I guess her stand-up is kind of blue, and she doesn't mind cursing or whatever. And Kaylee Cuoco is like America's little sweetheart. Now, granted, she voices Harley Quinn now on HBO Max, which is very foul-mouthed, but like we know her from 8 Simple Rules, we know her from Big Bang Theory, this sort of milquetoast type comedy. And Ms. Pat is just ripping her apart. Like, nobody, Big Bang Theory is so corny. Like, black people don't watch that. Why would I ever watch that? Da-da-da-da-da. I heard y'all were getting $1 million an episode, and I thought, for what? It was just so insulting. And Kaylee Cuoco is, like, really taking it in stride. But me as the viewer, I was like, dude, this is awkward as hell for everybody. Joel McHale's trying to, like, throw in a couple of jokes to keep the peace, but, like, it's very awkward. And they go canoeing, and then Bert loses the keys to his car. "Oh, guys, we can't get back," It's like, it's so obviously scripted, and this is why I don't watch things like the Kardashians and all these scripted reality shows. They call it sculpted reality in the industry, but it's scripted. It's scripted reality, and I think it's lame. I think it's not funny. So to me, the most interesting portions of this are only for several minutes in the entire episode. And other than that, it's the Bert Kreischer shock factor. We see his balls a bunch of times. We see his butt a lot. It's if you love Bert Kreischer, then maybe you'll enjoy this. But I would much, much, much rather just listen to one of his podcasts with Tom Segura or one of his interviews with Preston and Steve than to watch this. So I give the Cabin a D+. I really wish he realized that the best part is the conversations. All right, so up next we've got Social Distance. This is our final show on Netflix for today. It's from Orange is the New Black and Weeds creator Jenji Kohan. So obviously Netflix has a great relationship with her from Orange is the New Black. And as you can imagine from the title, Social Distance, this is a show born out of COVID and social distancing. And so all of these episodes take place for the most part over Zoom or over, sometimes we'll be in someone's house, but for the most part it's over Zoom, over Instagram, over whatever social, networking site you talk to people on. I watched 2 of these. This is an anthology series, so every episode is different cast, different characters. The first one featured Mike Coulter and Steven Weber as people that were in AA and people going through, obviously a tough time in COVID, wanting to drink and not being able to. So they're having, AA virtual meetings and all of that. So the character played by Mike Coulter, who I didn't quite recognize right away, but he's been in a bunch of stuff. He appears in The Good Wife and The Good Fight, my favorite show. But people might know him best as Luke Cage. So he's the star of this. And basically, he just found out that his ex-girlfriend moved in with this guy, and she's loving it. So he starts, taking pictures of him in a plant and, trying to, spice up his Instagram and kind of be funny and like, oh, me on my date with my plant, it's him in the plant playing checkers or whatever. And, so people at first were loving it, and then they were like, oh, this is, this died quick, or whatever. And it really threw him into this depression. And so Steven Weber plays his sponsor. And we see a couple of the actual AA meetings. So we see a couple of group shots of like 20 people. It's like Drew Barrymore's virtual audience on her show. And then episode 2 was starring Oscar Nunez from The Office as a guy with a family who's one of their uncles has just died, and so they're saying about, well, we can't have a funeral because it's COVID and this stinks, and let's honor him on here and this and that. Let's do a virtual funeral, and then of course some secrets are revealed about this character as we go on. So and it goes on like that. I didn't see any other episodes, but I think there's 8 total. Knowing Netflix, there's probably 8. Yeah. And I didn't look at even the cast for some of the other ones, but there might be people we know. Becky Ann Baker. Oh my God, she's from Freaks and Geeks. I should have watched that one. Who else? That's really all the ones I recognize like right away by name. So I don't know. But anyway, Dylan Baker from Nip Tuck. He's in that same one. I should have watched that. But my problem with shows like this is because they're anthology shows, we don't ever get to really know these characters. We see them for about a half hour or less, and that's it. So we don't have time to necessarily grow with them or connect with them. But I think we can connect on some levels to them. Like for me, I mean, I lost my aunt at the beginning of COVID. She had cancer. It wasn't COVID, but she died in like April, and we couldn't have a funeral for her. They had a very, very small ceremony with, my parents and her husband and kids, and that was it. And so certainly, these topics I think are relatable to a lot of people. The AA thing, I'll be honest, that's something I didn't necessarily think about with COVID. How, look, a lot of people are getting drunk in COVID and they're quarantined. It's really helping a lot of people. But for the people that can't, that could be very, very hard. And it's not something I thought about, I'm blessed to not, have an alcohol addiction, and I don't really know anybody that does, so it's not something that was on my radar. So in that respect, I like that this is looking at 8 different types of people in quarantine. Like, I like that aspect of it, but because of the half-hour format, we don't really get to know these people. And that's a big problem I have in general with some of the anthology series. I mean, when you think of the top anthologies of all time, they are things like The Twilight Zone, where really the characterization is secondary or maybe even tertiary to the sci-fi plot and the what-if sort of nature of it. Same with like Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Like, a lot of these people, a lot of these shows, I should say, are not based around the people. This one is. I think it does it better than some, and I think for a, obviously, immediate concept, like, this is not a show that we would have had if COVID didn't exist, much like Connecting last week on NBC that we talked about. I think this could certainly have been handled worse. But I don't know. I kind of like some of these characters. Maybe the half-hour arc we see here is enough. Maybe we don't need more than that. I certainly enjoyed it better than Modern Love on, I think Amazon has that. So I think this is slightly passable. And I guess we don't need more than one season. It's not listed as a miniseries, so there may be future seasons of this, but to me, I think 8 episodes is probably enough, because then you're sort of going to be repeating sort of archetype personalities, because obviously we're not diving, like I said, too deep into these guys. It's more like, okay, this dude's an alcoholic that just lost his girlfriend. This is a family whose uncle just died. Go, and scene kind of thing. So I will leave Social Distancing with a B-. All right, finally, we'll make this quick, because I like to keep these under an hour. Devils is next, and this is a show that was originally on, I think, Australian television. Let me see if that's true, or maybe Italian. Let's see here. It was Italian, from Sky Italy, and the CW got it. It's all in English, so there's no subtitles really, and it's people that you largely don't know, except, oh, there's Patrick Dempsey as like one of the stars, which is kind of interesting that he's doing like Italian television, because listen, if COVID didn't happen, we would never be seeing this in America, but CW had some gaps to fill in their schedule, so they said, well, let's get this show. So, it's just odd that such an A-lister like Patrick Dempsey, so long on Grey's Anatomy, is doing Italian shows that we never would have seen if not for COVID. But basically, the concept is it's a financial drama, I guess you could say. Basically, a worldwide financial conspiracy is becoming unraveled by a group of traders at a large investment bank. And what is Patrick Dempsey's character's, sort of doing here? Well, we're not quite sure yet. But he is sort of the mentor of some people. We see that somebody, leapt from the building and died inside the building, leapt from his office, I guess, or whatever, and died like in the foyer of the building, the lobby of the building. And so, what's this about? What's happening? This show is not good. It's okay. I think maybe if you are really into the financial market, if you're really into, trading and stocks and bonds and conspiracies surrounding it, maybe you'll get more out of this than I did. But it's I think very boring for what it is, like the financial mumbo jumbo stuff. And like HBO has done a couple of shows or movies where, Wall Street is sort of at the helm and finances and stuff. And I don't know, I felt like it was more engaging whenever I would see one of them. I forget what the name of the movie was they did recently. Well, recently, it was probably 5-6 years ago, but that was really enjoyable. And then the acting, of course, was so much better. This is, not that I know any of these actors, but it's all very, like, over-dramatized. Even Patrick Dempsey, look, I mean, Grey's Anatomy is not known for its acting. It's known for its soapiness and thereby sort of overacting. And there's good actors on there, like Sandra Oh is a great actress, and I don't think Meredith Grey is that good, but or Katherine Heigl, but the gal that plays Bailey, she's really good. There's good actors on it, but they have sort of that soapy nature, and this is basically a financial soapy drama, I guess you would call it. So it didn't really speak to me. The conspiracy thing might be interesting, mildly, I guess, but I don't know. In 2020, I have more things to worry about than stupid finances, because I'm worrying about my own finances. So this, Wall Street and well, of course, it's not Wall Street in Italy, but whatever it is in Italy, the Italian version of Wall Street. mixed with, the drama of people I don't really care about or want to know about. This show was just not very appealing to me at all. So I'm gonna leave Devils with a D plus. Let's keep it short and sweet. There's not much good about it, and odd to see Patrick Dempsey show up. But the CW, man, they keep getting these products from other countries, and Peacock has done the same, which is interesting because they don't have necessarily holes to fill on their schedule, but. I guess with Peacock, some of their regular programming that they had hoped to launch in the fall was slowed down by the pandemic. So I guess that does kind of make sense as well. But yeah, the CW is really like hammering home, like, let's get all this outside content. But whatever works for them. Obviously, Coroner is performing well enough for them that they've renewed it. So we'll see how Devils performs. A side note for Devils, this show being on the CW is like ridiculous. Like I don't know anybody who watches the CW that would watch this show. Like, this is maybe, I don't know, like, this seems like more of an Amazon type show, or CBS maybe, or something, or HBO or Showtime if it was done better. But like, there's nobody on the CW that would even remotely watch this show. Like, I feel like they could get higher ratings just playing reruns of Supernatural, So anyway, that's a topic for a different day, I guess. That's going to do it. We'll wrap it there. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe below and comment below too. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.